So, we've had a fantastic weekend talking about both in-depth, Heinlein, Tolkien, how to deal with a hostile industry, how to be a good writer, how the hell do you even publish a book on your own, etc. But now we're going to get a little more future-facing, because what is at the heart of sci-fi if not the consideration of counterfactuals and where is humanity going, where are we going, where could we go? And so we've got our lovely panelists, and we're just going to sort of get straight into things. First, on a story level, where do you see the world going for the types of stories that we tell, the type of stories that people hunger for? It's no longer simply Gilgamesh and, epic poems. What are your predictions for where the storytelling industry is going to go, and however you interpret that?
Hi, I'm Milo. Milo James Fowler. I've been Milo for 45 years, and I write sci-fi and fantasy. Got about 12 novels right now, half of them traditional, half of them self-published, maybe a quarter of them are sci-fi, and I read a lot of sci-fi. Before I started writing novels, I wrote short stories, and my goal was to get into as many prozines as I possibly could so I could get SFWA membership, Science Fiction Fantasy Writers of America. I did that. That was awesome. Check that off my list. Getting in and seeing what's popular now versus what I write was a little disheartening. After a couple of years of being in the SFWA, I kind of figured it wasn't for me, so I dropped out. I like to write hopeful fiction. I like to look in the future and be hopeful. I've been a teacher for 21 years. The next generation is very important to me. And so seeing the negative sci-fi that's been so popular in all the anthologies that come out, the short stories, the novels, it's disheartening. So I'd like to see more futurism that's optimistic. I know right now, drone technology is huge in sci-fi. AI is huge. Robots are just as popular now as they were in Asimov's day. And there's so much sci-fi coming out about robots. I know that's going to be huge going forward as well. Augmented reality. VR was big in the 90s. It's back. You've got Ready Player 2 that just came out. Ready Player 1, did anybody read that one? That was wonderful. I enjoyed it. I loved all the nostalgia. Did anybody try reading Ready Player 2? It's full of woke-splaining. Okay? Yeah. And I could barely get through it. It was not enjoyable. And if that's the future, I think people are going to get sick of it. I read the reviews. I see the reviews for John Joseph Adams' anthologies that come out. More and more, he's getting 1-2-star reviews of people saying, I'm tired of all this woke crap, right? Stephen King's books are coming out. He's losing readers. They're bleeding off. All the negative reviews. I'm tired of all this woke crap. Why does he keep mentioning Trump? That was years ago, right? Or months ago. So anyway, I'm hoping that there will be a reversal that, we've talked about Gen Z in some of these panels and what they're going to be looking for as far as an identity. And I hope the next generation is hungering for good stories where good conquers evil. I try to shine light into the darkness. Some of my stories and novels are pretty grim. Good always wins out because I believe that's the end of the story. I believe that good will win. And so my Judeo-Christian values shine through, and I hope that's what the next generation is yearning for. Something where positivity, optimism can win out over negativity.
I think a couple trends you're probably going to see in the future. I think you're going to see a lot of stuff about AI. It's an up-and-coming thing that, even though most of what we call AI right now is nothing of the sort, it's on everybody's minds. I think you're going to see a lot of stories about it. I'm on the fence about whether there's going to be a lot of corporate dystopianism fiction. On the one hand, it obviously would fit the times, and on the other hand, it may hit a little too close to home. So it may or may not become a thing. Lit RPGs are a big thing, and it's going to be a big thing for a while. When I first encountered the genre, it just felt really weird to me, but then I'm talking with my boss at my day job, and he's like, man, my son and his friends are all into these books where they just put like stat pages, and it's like playing a video game. Like, yeah, a Slit RPG. Gen Z loves it. It's not going anywhere. So it's a place to go. I think that you may see a resurgence of a particular flavor of somewhat hard sci-fi stuff based on within our own solar system, perhaps, because you're seeing things like SpaceX and Blue Origin really reviving space in a real way. And I think that as that happens, as it gets back into the cultural mindset, people are going to be more interested in stories set that way. Might be another decade or so before that really kicks off, but they're really starting to build some momentum, and I think that's gonna be there. The last thing that I'll throw out there, which I hate to say it as a publisher, but the reality is that the audience is shrinking. Fewer and fewer people read. It's just a thing right now, and it's a thing we have to adjust to. I hear him sighing as I say that, and I agree, but I also think it's true. It's just the numbers are what they are.
Well, the population of the younger generation is also shrinking, so you got shrinkage from two ends. I have, about a year ago, I fell down the rabbit hole of watching videos on YouTube where millennials and Gen Z folks react to movies of the past. And one of the things that's convinced me of is that there is an incredible appetite for stories that say things you're not allowed to say, but that everybody knows is true. The amount of relief and joy you see on the faces of these kids as they watch Indiana Jones or 2001 or A Clockwork Orange for the first time is astounding. Relief and joy at watching A Clockwork Orange. I mean, it's not supposed to be a comfortable film, but the fact that there's this movie that has historic respectability that's coming out and jumping right on the difference between goodness and compelled obedience it's resonating. So I think that whatever shape that the next wave takes, whatever subgenres it takes, it's going to have a much more pronounced humanist core as opposed to an anti-humanist core, which has been the growing case for the last 15 to 20 years. Things that connect people to a feeling of meaning and integration with culture, and that particularly tell them that they're not crazy for looking out at Clown World and thinking that something's wrong and I can't tell what. So I think that's where it's going to go.
Okay. These guys are a tough act to follow, but I'll look at it from two perspectives. First, the technological perspective, and more the story and theme perspective. You know, the Greek philosophers decried the invention of writing because, no longer would the youth have to actually memorize the epics. They could lean on this crutch of the written word and not train and develop their minds in the ancient disciplines that we hold so dear and memorize all of these important lessons in epic poetry.
And to be fair, they had a point. And, of course, the invention of the printing press. No longer did you have to have a controlled infrastructure of monks laboriously laboring to copy your manuscripts. Anyone could get one of these printing presses and turn out a monastery worth of copies of questionable materials getting their ideas across. And of course, we're just on the tail end of the beginning of a third revolution like that, the internet. No longer do you have to go through a formal process of going through a publisher that controls the infrastructure. You can write your own physical books if you want, or you can just post something up on the internet and share it.
what that's done is created so many different media options for enlightenment and entertainment. It has tended to devalue the power of the written word and the value of an ebook. You have new, with the computer tools, you have new emerging technologies like graphical art technology that has made it easier than ever for you to produce really good graphic novels and comics. No longer do you have to be an expert artist and hand draw every panel. There are also video technologies. Now anyone with a phone can create a movie. Like you look at classic movies like Alfred Hitchcock's The Rope. That's set in one scene, but still required a movie studio and the resources of a studio to produce and develop the film, and then laboriously. Well, I guess that was pretty much a single cut, so you didn't have to even do editing. But you can do that with an iPhone these days. So as storytellers, we have to be careful not to wed ourselves to a particular technology and a particular format, and we have to be open to other technologies and other formats, particularly with the near monopoly that Amazon has on the ebook market. Anyone who is writing should be thinking very carefully about what are their other channels and other opportunities. Amazon certainly does not have a lock on either the graphic novel or comic market. There are lots of websites that are getting into promoting that, from webtoons to arttoons and so forth. There are emerging video sites where you can produce your own little short films. So as a storyteller, be open to other media.
For ebooks, library distribution, and also for audiobooks, incredibly useful, and they're accessible now.
Okay. Now, from a storytelling point of view, innovations in genre tend to come from people taking pieces of old genres and mixing them together. Harry Potter took the old, mixed fantasy with the old school, British boarding school kind of novels to create an innovative product that was spectacularly successful. You can look at, some of the most innovative, genre pioneers. They're usually doing things where they're marrying up, mystery and science fiction, or noir and science fiction. So, for the lottery ticket kind of spectacular breakthrough, you're looking to come up with a novel and clever way of combining old styles and genres together, or going for the safer, singles and doubles instead of trying to go for the grand slam home run, of looking at what are the emerging things like the lit RPG, and trying to follow the people who have pioneered those new and innovative genres.
Okay. There's a saying that the point of fantasy isn't to show that there's dragons in the world, but to show that the dragons can be defeated. Do you think that fantasy has a place going forward to sort of show, yes, the world is a place to live in and to be hopeful about? And what forms do you think that might take? What mediums do you think that might take?
Grimdark, I think, is the most popular fantasy right now, and it's. I heard in one of the sessions about the opposite. The Superversive session was talking about the opposite of Grimdark being. They had a term for it. Noble Bright. I would lean that direction, the Noble Bright. I think Grimdark is going to eventually lose its flavor. I mean, you can only be so grim and so dark for so long before you just get sick of it. Hopefully. There's got to be hope. I mean, the hero's journey is all about the hero discovering, what they're capable of. They've got to be capable of more than where they started out. They've got to be capable of good. They've got to be capable of changing the world around them. I think that's what we need to see in fantasy. I think that's a great genre to explore those themes.
So, variation on the quote you put out there, I'm pretty sure it was C.S. Lewis, who commented that he, putting the monsters in, I forget the exact quote, but it was putting the monsters in his story wasn't so much about showing the monsters as it was about teaching that the monsters could be fought and that you can fight against them. I think that's really important from a cultural sense. Fantasy has been with us since the beginning of storytelling. In every culture, in every part of the world, in the English language, it harkens all the way back to Beowulf. The first written item in the English, the first written story in the English language was a fantasy story. And why? Because we teach our children that the monsters can be fought. I took it quite literally when my son told me he was afraid of the dark. I gave him a wooden sword and shield to go to sleep with so he could fight the monsters. And it worked. Okay? I would pass it on. It works. You teach the kids that they can fight. And that's what part of why we're here, harkening back to the last panel, is to teach us that we can fight. So I don't think fantasy's going anywhere. I think it's going to be with us for the next 4,000 years of writing. And post-writing, a post-literate world of video and audio, which is where we're heading. The fantasy's going to be there too. We've gone from the cave paintings to the clay tablets to the monk luminous manuscripts to the printing press to the internet to audio and video, and that has been with us the whole way, and it's never leaving.
Oh, I don't know. I kind of hope it doesn't have a history because I'm so sick, or a future because I'm so sick of it. But what I checked out of the fantasy world years ago, aside from occasionally writing a story that's accidentally fantasy, because I got so sick of it. What I would hope, and the fantasy novels that I do love and return to, are ones that have a sort of deeply Jungian sense about the metaphorical confrontation with the self, the sitting down with Satan and being prosecuted. Those kinds of stories, I think, have a deep resonance and a long life. And I would love to see more of that. I hope they'll come back, but I've got no idea because I'm not plugged in.
I'd say fantasy is a relatively low-risk genre for an author who wants to promote and depict the good, the beautiful, and the true. Because it provides, I kind of hate to phrase it this way, it provides a layer of deniability to critics who might scoff at your archaic notions of valor and morality, and it just gives you a full frame for depicting those without having to worry about censure. So if that's something, like if that is something you want to accomplish in your writing and you are afraid or concerned about the potential for that kind of negative attention and criticism, fantasy might be a worthwhile genre to look into, because I get the sense that it's more tolerated in that genre.
The purpose of a fantasy story is to fight the dragon, and that's okay. It doesn't mean you're a terrible person because you killed this beautiful beast. Unless that's the story. You've spoken a little bit about, the way publishers and Amazon has control over the industry. What predictions or thoughts or hopes do you have for how people will connect with the stories that resonate with them, that they want to read? What forms will this take? And sort of where you see the industry as a whole going as a writers connecting with readers and vice versa.
Yeah,
let's just keep doing the round. It's easier that way.
Wattpad and Radish have been huge for years, and Amazon's catching up with Kindle Vella right now.
I've got some inside info on that.
The younger generation, Gen Z, they love this whole, especially when it's free, right? They don't want to pay for anything. But Gen Z loves the serial format. They love interacting with the author like they can do on Wattpad. You can leave comments on every story that you read. You can give advice to the author if you want things to be changed a certain way. They're used to having input, the younger generation, and what they read. So I see that being popular going forward. I don't think Vella's going to do as well because Amazon is all about the money. That's all they want, and they're charging the readers to pay for tokens and use those tokens to pay for chapters. And the next generation is used to getting everything for free. They've cut the cable. They've stolen their parents' Netflix account. They use their password everywhere. They're used to getting everything for free.
But they do jump in on subscription services.
They do. That is true. Like Disney Plus.
Well, no, but even on for small potatoes, Patreon, Subscribestar, Gumroad.
Okay.
They'll put money behind people they've grown to like already.
Okay. And interacted with.
They're used to price discrimination.
Mm-hmm.
They like price
Yes, they do.
discrimination done right.
A little inside info on Kindle Vella. I know a couple of people who were paid to go into the program because they're big sellers. The program is DOA. There is nothing moving over there. Its time in the world is probably very limited.
They paid me just for my first month,
Yep.
and I haven't gotten much traction.
Yep.
But I'm all about trying everything that's new because I figure if it takes off, hey, I'm there.
Exactly.
You know? And if it doesn't take off, so what? I'll pull it. I'll self-publish it elsewhere.
It's
know?
good to
So
be
you've
in
got
early.
inside of your info than I do.
I think it was Dan who mentioned yesterday that I forget the name of the person who took over at Amazon.
It was
it Andy?
Yeah.
Somebody else
Anna.
mentioned it. I can't remember who it was, but Jeff Bezos is out at Amazon. He's moved on to other things, apparently to go full-time at suing Tesla. SpaceX.
Yeah.
Suing Elon Musk. Whatever side of that debate you want to get on, I don't care. But I am not a fan of Jeff Bezos, personally, but when he was in charge of Amazon, it was all about the dollars. He's not in charge anymore, and I make the exact same prediction that whoever it was made, that the future of Amazon clamping down on unpopular voices is they're probably going to rise in the future now that he's out. Which means that people should be looking ahead and thinking, what are we going to do next? Where are things going to go? I also think that the future, business tends to head in cycles, and if you look back in the early days of the magazines, you had lots of magazines, lots of small presses, and then they ended up consolidating around what was the Big Five a few years ago, and I think it's now the Big Four.
Is it?
I think one of them got bought out recently. I can't remember the details.
By somebody.
I think the trad publishers are going to probably consolidate down to the Big Three, maybe Big Two. I don't know which ones they'll be, but that's the nature of such cycles. And when Amazon introduced Kindle, it was a free-for-all with all the indie authors, and I foresee a future in which that consolidates more as well into smaller presses, merging into bigger presses. Somebody asked that question the other day. And it, unfortunately, probably won't mostly happen by means of, hey, let's cooperate. It will probably mostly happen via the cutthroat means of the market, where the winners buy up the losers. Which I will be totally honest, with my own publishing house, our strategy is just to survive and be one of the last ones standing. I don't think that's all bad news. The Big Three are very heavily ideologically driven, and they can afford to be because they are owned by large corporate parents. The large corporate parents are actually what's driving them to be ideological in many cases. They lose money. A lot of them lose money, and the big corporate subsidizes them to continue to do that. And the beauty of that is if your opponent is losing money and bleeding money, then there is an opportunity there, because if you're not losing money and bleeding, you can stay in the game and outwin them, outlast them, win by attrition. And I think that the likelihood is that the smaller, as they merge, the emerging publishers in that market are not necessarily likely to be on our side, but they are a lot more likely to not be ideologically driven by the other side, because they won't be able to afford to be. They will have to continue to make a profit in the market. And so on the business side, I think that's where things are heading. That's the way most businesses go. You get a new industry, it's a free-for-all, and then it consolidates over time.
Spinning off of that, temperamentally, writers and other artists are going to always skew 80% liberal, whatever the definition of that is to the day, because to do creative work, you have to be high in openness to experience, which is the single personality trait that most predicts a distaste for conservatism and tradition. I don't think that Amazon controls publishing. Amazon controls what is currently the biggest single distribution channel. And they're in trouble, not just because of the changeover, but because their business model has moved in the last 10 years from depending on books and other straight retail work to depending on drop-shipped goods from China and on the patronage of the NSA and the CIA and of Chinese intelligence for their data centers.
He may sound like a conspiracy theorist, but this is completely confirmed
Public
and true.
record,
Public record.
2012 was when everything got signed. That was when AWS went open because they realized they built this big infrastructure and they were still kind of running in the red, so they needed a new profit center. Because of the geopolitical changes that are going on right now, Amazon as a force in publishing, as the force in publishing, has its days numbered. It'll probably continue to be a player, but getting around them is nowhere near as hard as it was 5 years ago. And it's just going to get easier.
I also think, I'll steal the floor back for just a second before we let Hans go. I also think that all the big tech companies, not just Amazon, but all of them, I think the days are numbered before they hit antitrust lawsuits. Whether you're a fan of his or not, Trump's single biggest mistake was not going after them early in his career.
Okay, I have some inside info on this that I actually can share.
Oh, I want to hear.
So, when I was involved in the startup culture, there were two big things that you had to have in order to get funding. You had to be willing to do business with the U.S. government, and you had to be willing to do business with the foreign intelligence services. Most people in the Valley in the 90s did not want to do business either with the U.S. government or especially with the U.S. military because they were all old hippies. By the time, after September 11th, that all changed, but there was still a lot of resistance to doing business with the U.S. intelligence complex. Palantir was started because it was the only company that would talk to U.S. intelligence. I have seen more companies fail to get funded because they did not want to sell potential military secrets to China before the U.S. got them first. My company was one of them. And as the geopolitical situation changes and China starts to get seen as more and more of an adversary and maybe even an enemy, which it is even now in the Biden administration, which has close ties historically to China, that kind of business model will not just become less common, it will become felonious. And a lot of these companies are going to have big holes in their balance sheets. Yeah. And it's going to incentivize a third internet boom as new companies rise up to take presence in an internet that is primarily keyed towards the American market and that is controlled. I'm not a big fan of international controls, but it's the reality of what's coming, that is controlled in the way they interface with the outside world.
We've all more or less agreed that we're looking at a situation of a current centralized control state whose control is weakening and liable to fracture. We can look to history for lessons on how that fracturing will take place and how we can kind of speed the process along. And the answer is decentralization. Right now, yes, Amazon controls a large part of the ebook market, for instance. They control the advertising of what book are you going to see on your screen as you're browsing through Amazon looking for books. That's in their control. What's in our control is working in a decentralized fashion, to work together, to share book recommendations. That's part of what the book sale that I've been involved in is all about. I got together with a handful of friends 3 years ago. There were people who were doing these book sales. They've stopped doing it. Let's just get together and agree that we're all going to sell our books all on sale for the same week, and we will all mutually promote each other's books in the sale as a whole on our personal social media and websites. It's been really successful. I mean, if you had told me I was going to be selling 5,000 books for people, I wouldn't have believed it. And it's only getting bigger. That kind of decentralization where readers and authors alike are working outside of the network to develop channels of information. That is exactly how the printing press worked in the Reformation, where instead of the communication of written information being all centralized under church control in monasteries, any two guys could set up a shop in the back of the tavern and print their broadsides and distribute them out on the street and get their opinions heard. The internet provides that same kind of decentralized communication possibilities. Now, the powers that be are smart enough to see that, and they are doing their best to avoid that, to centralize it, to insist on everyone everyone operating in particular walled garden infrastructure like Facebook or like Twitter, where they can keep an eye on you, and if you become too much of a threat, well, we'll just throttle your voice or cut you off altogether. And they want to be judicious in doing that, because of course if they went whole hog and started suppressing everyone, people would be leaving and going to alternate platforms. So paying attention to those decentralized networks, trying to make anti-fragile networks, communities of authors looking at diversifying and going to different platforms, those are all very viable strategies for what you can be doing in the future.
So, excellent. How do you predict, to use a silly term, normies, how they will sort of, if it's possible to connect with them about how there is censorship going on, there are false claims going on, it's not, this is a convention of white supremacist, misogynist, transphobe hat wearers.
They got one right, the hat wearing part.
Got a bunch of, everyone up here has hats. Do you think there's much chance of people sort of waking up to, hey, I don't like misogyny and I don't like white supremacy, but I sort of see these terms are being applied too broadly. What hope do you see for how authors and creative types can communicate and convince that actually we're just telling good stories and there's some insane people screeching?
Before we answer, after this question, this gentleman here had a question.
Actually that's probably a better question than mine, because I'm sort of stretching.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Beautiful. I'm not a developer, but I'll supply content.
Can I field this? Because this is something Hans and I have had discussions about.
Let's repeat this question for the benefit of people who are listening to the
recording. Yeah.
So he's asking about, essentially, if I understand the question right, building your own platform to compete with Amazon's Kindle to get the distribution out there because they own the distribution channel. Kindle, Audible, whatever. Which is something that I have definite plans to do.
You guys should team up.
Maybe we should. We should talk more. There are a couple of difficulties involved in that beyond the things you've already mentioned. Those things you've mentioned are actually, I won't say they're easy, but they're solved problems. We know how to do them, right? The biggest difficulty is that Amazon Kindle controls the market, and Amazon controls the Kindle. So there's not a defined protocol for us to automatically get an ebook onto somebody else's Kindle without going through Amazon. You do, and I'll tell you why in a second, because everybody has them already, okay? So
You would have to be able to automate the sideload process from the user's point of view.
You do, and the problem with that is that I could do it. Technically, it's not that hard. It's illegal because of DMCA rules. The Digital Millennium Copyright Act makes it illegal to do that.
Is it the DMCA or is it the one that killed Aaron Swartz?
Probably both.
Yeah.
To be totally honest, reverse engineering their hardware and their protocols is considered hacking, and
when you break the encryption.
When you break the encryption, and it is illegal. The reason you care, and I've had this discussion with Hans many times, who keeps encouraging me, you should build this platform, our website. He's like, this was great, you should get this out, push this out more. And then I had to sit down with him and explain to him, it's like, Hans, you're the one pushing me to build this platform, and you won't buy ebooks from me. You're buying them on Amazon. because Amazon puts them on his Kindle automatically and makes it happen. Now, I don't believe this is an insurmountable problem.
I was going to say, I know about a backdoor that I think gets around both DMCA and the CFA.
Then maybe we should talk later. Because this is a problem I have plans to solve it, but I think the issue is resources. You have to have enough resources to go after the market, not just to build a product. Building a product is easy. I can do that. But then getting it out there and getting people to adopt it is a different issue.
Got part of an answer for you.
They don't. Well, that's what Amazon does on their Kindles. Yeah.
It is.
It's the strategy, and it works. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Marketplace.
I'm willing to talk. Let's hook up. All
Afterwards,
three of
all
us
three of us,
actually.
Yeah. Marketplace problems are hard. Anyone can create a Christine's List website where people can sell their used bicycles, but everyone goes to Craigslist because that's where everyone else is selling used bicycles.
Yeah.
Anyone can make their own dating platform, but everyone goes to Tinder or Plenty of Fish or whatever because that's where people are.
And this is not insurmountable, but it's hard.
Yep.
You're correct. It's not insurmountable, but it is hard. And so that's why I haven't done it yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've got to talk afterwards because this will sidetrack the whole panel and it'll be
Yes.
fun, but we should.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, another question.
It sounds like Substack writers, right? Because all these people are leaving YouTube because they're destroying it, right? And I'm watching shows show up on Substack. Frankly, people I barely stand, but it's like, oh, also interested because they're getting the big finger to authority, right? You know, I'm like a moth to that point. But, you know, I mean, that's kind of what we're talking about, right? I mean, that's
Could be. That could be one way to do it.
Sounds great, except Substack will go away at some point because somebody, they'll either break it, force it to obey, or they'll buy it.
That is a real thing.
Which is why the ultimate solution that wins permanently, or at least as permanently as anything does, is going to be one that is impossible for any single point of control to work, but is still easy enough for the user that it's less trouble than dealing with the centralized systems that they can't stand talking to customer service about.
Yeah. So I think we were wanting to wrap this up before 2. So,
Do we have a
sorry.
question
Yeah.
Well, so something kind of, I guess, related to what you were talking about before. So the whole build your own thing.
Mm-hmm.
So as far as the future of future of sci-fi, fantasy, for example, last day with Castelia House, right?
Mm-hmm.
He explained several times that already Amazon sales aren't important to sustaining Castelia House at the present time, and I think so. So I guess my question is, how important do you think? Do you think rather now more so than fans people are now should be more considered supporters or backers in the community to as the future of sci-fi to move forward.
I was going to say, why not both? I mean, there are multiple revenue opportunities. It goes back to one of the themes that's been running here, I think, all morning about differentiating your offerings so that you can capture the different revenue streams. You've got some super fans who would gladly pay $25, $50 to get your latest release 3 months ahead of everyone else. Fine, sell it to them, for that amount. You've got people who like your books so much they want to put a hardcover on the library. You sell that to them for a lesser amount. You've got some cheapskates who wait until the 99-cent sale to buy your ebook. Well, okay, I'll take 99 cents that I wouldn't otherwise get.
And you got library patrons.
Yeah, library patrons. But having lots of different revenue streams to enable a viable economic infrastructure where customers and authors or other suppliers of goods or values or services can get together, more power to you.
So I'm going to come at this slightly from another angle. What you're saying is not insane, and it's actually really savvy, but there's a danger in it that's not easy to spot. And that is a phenomenon called audience capture. It is just as possible to be controlled and censored by being afraid to piss off your own audience as it is to be controlled and censored by being afraid to piss off your distributor or your bank or the mob. And as we move into models where there's a lot more direct patronage, if you want to maintain your artistic freedom and integrity, you have to set a tone early on that you are not available at the whim of your audience. Otherwise, they will capture you, and you will eventually become the mouthpiece for whatever the popular ideology is, because you're afraid of having your livelihood ripped away.
Mm-hmm. Diversify, be anti-fragile.
Mm-hmm.
No.
Yes, I really do.
It's a real danger.
It's a real danger. I have known best-selling authors who write some of the most beautiful, what used to be considered progressive stories that are also part of the cultural tradition instead of trying to tear it down, who have decided privately to refrain from ever writing a minority character again because they're afraid of pissing off their audience. This is a real problem.
And I'm familiar with some very talented authors who've written some amazing books that I really like and won't go back there and do that because there are some other genres or other works that they offer that their audience is expecting and they get paid more. And that's an economic decision that they make. But there comes a point where you have to decide whether you're going to serve yourself and your vision or whether you're going to cater to the people paying the bills. And you can go either way.
There's a reason that artists and whores have been lumped together in every civilization. I'm not kidding, and I'm not overstating it. We both know what we are, and all we're arguing over is price. And so you have to know going in what's not for sale, or you will sell it eventually.
Okay. So what is sci-fi and fantasy if not an answer to the question, what if? What if forest elves moved into the concrete jungle? What if we got faster than light travel? What ifs and the answers to those what ifs do you have for the industry and the future of sci-fi, and where do you dream of seeing things go?
I'm glad I'm at the end of the line for this one.
We're starting with you this time.
Bastard.
No, we adhere to tradition.
I have a simple answer, so I'll go first, which is my dream for the industry to go is where I get rich and have a big house out in the country where I'm left all the hell alone. That's a beautiful dream, and it's all I really want.
Well, business has settled down enough that I can sit down again with my ultra left-wing friends, just as I've been able to this weekend with my new right-wing friends. Because that's what paradise work looks like to me.
I miss that. I agree.
I don't care if we get along. What I care about is that we have fun not getting along.
Can we very vehemently not get along and still have a beer afterwards?
Exactly.
I'll pass.
Arguing fun again.
Yes.
True diversity.
Yep. How about
True
you?
diversity. I'd like to see. I was talking to Dan yesterday about what would Christian sci-fi look like. Well, how about just having a Christian character who's not demeaned in a novel that's just a mainstream sci-fi novel? You know, just include somebody with maybe a perspective that we don't often see in sci-fi.
You need to check out Silver Empire.
We have a lot of that.
Watch my.
That's our shtick.
Watch for my series, The Antithesis Progression, coming out next year.
I guess I was thinking more mainstream, like a mainstream publisher, including a Christian character.
The mainstream publishers are dead.
That would be the
They're
future
dead.
someday.
If there's not something to struggle against, what's
So,
the fun?
We'll be mainstream eventually.
A comment on the mainstream publishers are dead is it is almost impossible to get picked up as a new author by a mainstream publisher right now.
Regardless of ideology.
Regardless of anything. They are living off of their big name authors. That's where they're making all of their money. They're most of them are not taking new authors almost at all, and they're just milking what they've got. And
they're using dead IP for tax deductions.
And
there's more money in that than in new sales.
And the thing about that is that's when you are milking your cash cow assets and nothing else. Your time limited cash cow assets, because these guys are not young. These old best-selling IPs, they will eventually go away. And any business that is relying on that and is not nurturing anything new ultimately is going to fall because they have nothing else coming in.
Especially when the only value proposition they offer now is social respectability, and they're pissing it away at an accelerated rate.
Right. Mm-hmm. So they will fall. It's just a matter of time, and you just have to outlast them.
And they don't have the resources to make offers to you that are any better than you would get going it either alone or through a micropress.
Yep.
You know, the days of here's a $10,000 advance to an untested author. I mean, I don't know anyone who's, you know, unless you're politically connected, and then you add a few more zeros to it. But
it's the ticket.
Right. How many of you are late boomers, Gen X, or early millennials? Okay. There was another period like this in the 1890s. They called them the Lost Generation. They were the generation that grew up between the end of the Gold Rush and the Great Panic and the beginning of the Progressive Era. These authors included Hemingway, Heinlein, Steinbeck, all of the American authors and screen luminaries who built the culture of the 20th century. We are that generation for the next century. And just like them, we can expect not to have massive success until fairly late in life.
If within our own life at all.
But our voices are the ones that everyone's going to be looking to make sense and meaning out of whatever compromise gets negotiated out of the current cultural and geopolitical ferment.
Okay. So, do we have any remaining questions or?
Very quick question.
Yeah.
You mentioned lit RPG, which I've been.
Yeah, I've never heard of it before. Yeah.
Ready Player One.
Have you read Ready Player One?
Yeah.
That's lit RPG. It's the prototype lit RPG.
Huh.
Yeah.
And if you want to read a great satire, read Bob Defendi's Death by Cliché.
Okay.
Oh, question.
It may be, but Ready Player One is the one that everybody knows. I mean, it's the one that's out there. You could sit on any genre and argue about what's the prototype and what got there first, and usually the one that's the actual prototype nobody's ever heard of. So, except for the guy who wrote the one people have heard of, who picked up on that.
Okay, so just sort of to kind of bring us back to where we started. You've talked a fair amount about what you think the industry will do, and then Christine asked, what do you want the industry to do? And what I would like to hear is, we've talked about a little bit about what kind of content you think you'll see, but let's just hear what you hope for. What kind of content do you want to see? What excites you about the future of science fiction in the material that's being created? Where do you want to go with this?
I'll take the lead on that one.
Okay.
Well, where I'm going right now, actually. I have a successful career, and really, I don't need to write science fiction. I'm in it because the particular kind of science fiction and the ideas I'm playing around with, I find to be fun. I have been experimenting and working on some novel ideas in electromagnetics that are relatively simple and straightforward, and really surprised me it hadn't been discovered a century ago. So I thought, well, gee, it'd make a great premise for a story if it was discovered a century ago, and somehow an evil conspiracy or cabal had suppressed that knowledge and information. And of course, since we're talking conspiracies, I'd make this the conspiracy that is secretly behind the scenes responsible for pulling the strings of all those other conspiracies that you've heard about. They're the ones that are secret in the background. So, it launched me on writing a series of alternate history conspiracy thrillers where I got to rework the course of human history from ancient times to the present in the guise of a secret forces that have been acting behind the scenes to do battle with each other and control the destiny of human civilization for their own ulterior means. And it's been so much fun because I've gotten to learn about all of the historical context, all of the existing conspiracy theories, science and how the scientific method works, all of the methods of social control, and the history of how DARPA turned on Facebook the same day they canceled the LifeLog project and was funding Google and things like that, and just play with it in a fictional context, and I intend to continue doing that.
Is that your Hidden Truth book?
Yep.
All right.
Well, the thing I'm hoping to see, and so I'm writing it, is the re-entry of geopolitics into the arena of science fiction. Geopolitics is a discipline that looks at the interaction between politics and geography. And it went out of fashion after World War II because the United States, in establishing a global hegemony, made it irrelevant. Now that we have fewer troops deployed overseas than at any time since 1919, we're about to find out that geography matters again. And that awareness is going to be, I think it's going to be foundationally important to anyone wanting to make sense of what's happening in the world. And since the greatest relevant sciences often become great science fiction fodder, I'm looking forward to the geopolitical science fiction that's coming down the pipe.
That's a good answer. One of the first published pieces I had was a short story picked up by Dr. Jerry Pornell. I was very fortunate for that. In Vox Day's There Will Be War series. And it was a hard sci-fi set in the future, and the story itself doesn't go into a lot of it, but the background of the universe I created was a modern Earth geopolitics extended into space, because I think that's going to happen. Most of our sci-fi shows, most of the sci-fi we know and we've grown up with basically shows Americans in space in the future, and
or the UN, which is the same thing.
An American-like hegemony runs
that was what
the Federation.
What kicked me out of the Expanse was an Iranian head of the UN running affairs on Mars. I was like, sorry.
And I think, I do think that as the U.S. global hegemony it's a word I can't say very well, decreases in scope, I think you're going to see other we already see it. China has a large space station presence that they're constructing right now, and they are doing national space races with our private space companies trying to keep up.
And occasionally shooting down our satellites.
Yes. I would like to see, going back to what Milo mentioned, and also what we do, following Hans's line at both of these guys of I'd like to see more of what we do, which is why we do it. A very large portion of our catalog is exactly what Milo mentioned of
Hope in Dark Places.
Hope in Dark Places and
good fighting evil.
Christian fiction that doesn't suck. And
or in my case, non-Christian fiction that doesn't suck and whimsy.
and what we mean by that is largely exactly what he said of the case of stories that have characters who are Christian or have a worldview that is Christian that is just inherent in the story rather than beat you on the head a la
Frank Peretti.
The Left Behind
Behind
series.
books,
I couldn't remember his name, but all
Jerry
that
Jenkins and
crap,
Tom LaHaye.
which is whatever. And
well, that is to the right wing what SJW fiction is to the left wing.
It is.
It's the same kind of thing.
And
you're not making Christianity cool. You're just ruining it.
You're just ruining it.
Right.
And the example that I like to use
Killing
heavily
trees unnecessarily.
is Dracula. It's a classic piece of
wonderful.
horror.
Yep.
It's a classic piece. Everybody knows it. Most people love it. And it is not what most people would think of as a Christian novel. And yet, the story does not work without the Christian worldview that is fundamentally inherent in the book, right? The entire setup, vampires are one that actually is one of my personal pet peeves because everybody in the modern world likes to make their personal take on the vampire mythos, but when you take the Christianity out of it, it doesn't make any damn sense anymore.
And there's a subtext layer to it. The reason that was done was because Bram Stoker was recovering from syphilis that he'd caught from hookers, and the book itself the book itself is a screed against Lord Byron and Percy Bysshe Shelley, whose characters he combined to make Dracula. So it's a culture war book, where he's attacking the libertine lifestyle that took him down and ultimately killed him.
I did not know that, but it makes it an even better example than I knew.
And syphilis,
so it's what we do as our fiction. We have rather a lot of it, and I'd like to see more of it. I would enjoy more of it. So.
Last of what he's
I mean, I grew up watching Star Wars and Raiders of the Lost Ark, Indiana Jones. 20 years ago, I was watching Firefly, loved it. I don't want to see the next Firefly. I don't want to see the next Star Wars. I don't want to see the next Raiders of the Lost Ark. I'd like to see something new. And so I found that in Josiah.
Here.
So as a reader, I found that in Josiah Bancroft's series, the Babel books. There's 4. The first 3 are already out. Never read anything like it unless you go back to Jules Verne, his style. It's totally new, nothing like it I've ever read before, and I feel inspired by it. When I read it, I want to go write something, right? And that's what I want to do when I read something. I want to be inspired to write. I want to be enlightened. I want to be entertained, right? I want it to be fun, but I want to be challenged intellectually at the same time.
Recapture what the old science fiction did for us, not the way the old science fiction did it.
The sense of wonder.
Yes.
Exactly.
Big time.
All right.
Okay.
Awesome. Thanks.
Thank you.
Panelists. Christine.
Yeah.
Thank you.